Hello and welcome to another randomised gaming video. I am once again your host, Random Gamer Riven. Now, over the course of this week we've got some unexpected planned videos as we intend to cover Xbox Live indie gaming. And the reason for that is, for those of you who don't know, the indie platform on Xbox 360 is due to close on October the 7th. Now, it was due to close last week, but it's been given a stay of reprieve, and having spent most of this week so far and the weekend previous actually playing a selection of games to see what we should be downloading, we've actually come to the conclusion that we should cover this, as there are some really great games on this platform that just haven't been covered. Even when you sort of do Google search, I'm seeing a lot of very little information on some of these games, and some of them are actually really good and basically unheard of. I think part of the problem with Xbox Live Indie is a lot of people did turn their noses up at it because it was online only, myself unfortunately included, because I disliked the fact that when you purchased one of these games you had to be connected to Xbox Live in order to play them, and that has always been an issue for myself and many other gamers, including a lot of members of our team, because there's a whole digital rights issue involved in the fact that you need an online connection. And even in this modern world, a lot of people don't have 24/7 internet access or reliable internet access that gives them constant connection. You can often get package losses, etc. And it's certainly a very annoying factor that many tech companies don't factor this in. They only factor it in for the very people with the top end connections that never drop out. And there is, as I said, a digital rights issue here where we do need to talk about ownership, and this issue is going to get bigger and bigger as more digital platforms close and games close. There is a caveat, indeed, certainly in British law and stuff, that, you know, if you're buying a game that's saying it's going to be online only or whatever, they need to make it very clear. And also there needs to be a lifespan for when you purchase the game for how long it should actually be active for. So certainly under the sales of good action, something like 5 years that has to be good, fit for the purpose sold. And certainly with many games, you could argue it should be about 5 years for online games that they have to offer these services for. Now, there are a lot of games where we have seen where server closures and digital rights stuff have been closed down long before. I remember Armored Core 5 had the online closed within 2 years, which was pretty depressing, it has to admit. And there is a serious case to argue that some of those developers should be forced to support them for longer. Now, when platforms, of course, go as Xbox Indie, it means all the games related to it are gone. And in some cases, these games will be lost for good because they aren't available on other platforms. And interestingly, even platforms like iOS now, some games are available on iOS, but of course with the recent 32-bit to 64 OS upgrade, many old 32-bit games no longer work, and if the developers aren't around or don't want to update that game the minute you upgrade, it's gone on your mobile. So I think digital rights is a huge issue, and we're going to discuss that more at some point in the future because it needs to be discussed. But for now, we're going to take a look at some of the many and the best Xbox Live indie games out there. And as you can see from the 3,300 available, it's quite a daunting task. Yes, there are some terrible games. There are some, quite frankly, offensive games on here. And there are a couple of games that are basically aiming for the modern trend. So there is an awful lot of awful games with zombies in them and avatars as well. However, there are some other titles that have been very professionally put together and very wellly made that would actually put retail games or even Xbox Live Arcade games to go to shame with their quality, and those games we don't want to see lost. So we're going to go through a selection of them in this first video. Although I don't like real world events to affect our videos, in light of the tragedy that has occurred in Las Vegas this week, I won't be covering any gun related games in this video. We're only going to cover puzzle and sort of platform games in this video. Yes, later on we might cover some of the sort of sci-fi ship shooting games, but we won't be covering any sort of FPSs or gun shooter games with realistic weapons in these videos. But I will write up a blog post towards the end of the week of just all the good games that are probably worth downloading if you like Xbox Indie across the whole genres, or certainly worth giving it a try. I mean, you've got till October the 7th. Microsoft have said they will try and archive some games, and hopefully we'll give them a few suggestions for games to them to archive and perhaps leave on the Xbox Indie service. I think, to be honest, they should leave them all for now and then just start picking off the ones that really aren't very good or were clearly quite offensive, as there are stuff like Baby Maker, which really was quite a naff game, and you get a lot of titles that will also feature busty women on the cover art and some other stuff. So basically titles like that, usually when you see them, straight off, you're like, yeah, we'll just avoid those. I mean, you only need to look at them. They look cheap and nasty and just aren't worth the time. So many of them were clearly just quick cash grabs by developers, and some of them really aren't worth playing or archiving in any way, shape or form. But I'm just going to start with by demoing the first issue we did actually have with Xbox Indie, and that is the online element of it. So I'm just going to quickly show you Onslaught. Now, this was an Amiga game that actually got a port to Xbox Indie. I can't recommend this port, as unfortunately it was very, very buggy, sadly. It's actually a port of the Amiga version, but it's overly buggy, so I'm not going to recommend it. But just demo this, as I'm currently offline, and we're going to try connecting via offline. You'll just see what happens when we try and run the game. So as you can see, it doesn't run in the slightest, which is really, really annoying. And that was one of the reasons why we at Randomised Gaming tended to avoid these games, because we didn't like the factor. But having actually gone through and played quite a few this week, I realised there are some really great games. Now, quite a lot of these are now available on other platforms. There are a couple that have got upgraded versions on PS4 and other platforms. Many of them have also got Steam releases. Some had iOS and Android releases, but in many of those cases now, with the recent updates, they may no longer function. So we're primarily going to concentrate on those ones that didn't get Steam and PS4 releases. But we will do a bit of covering the various versions, because in some cases, the only console release is on Xbox Live Indie Games. So without further ado, let's jump into our first game, and this is going to be Delta. And this was made by Hermit Games. And just before I launch Delta, I should say that this game features a number of strobe lighting, flashing effects, and many other colour and vibrant lighting effects that if you suffer from any type of photosensitivity or epilepsy, you should not watch. In fact, it's probably best you cease watching this video if you suffer from any of those conditions. So Delta is a rather trippy rhythm game, and it's difficult to describe. It's a bit like the Death Star Trench from the original Star Wars Atari arcade game. You're zooming down, you basically have to collect things and dodge obstacles. Like a chasing, racing, speeding game, you can't stop moving, you just got to collect things as you go. One of the reasons I quickly flagged this, and I'll let the gameplay do the talking about what you think of it, is that it is one of the few games that, as far as I'm aware, only got an XBLA indie release. So once this service goes, this game will be gone. So we're going to be purchasing it for sure, because it is actually a very good and interesting take on the music, rhythm, theme games. Okay, and next up is the game I cannot pronounce, qrth-phyl. You can see it in the top left there. Don't worry, I'll include links in the video description below of all the games and their links to their Xbox Live page. This is a really good game. As far as I can tell, currently there's only a Xbox Live release. There was a PC release, which was DRM3, I should add, but it was released on a service that is now defunct. And please don't go pirating this game on PC. Please give the developer some cash by buying it on Xbox Live. But basically, it is a wonderful Snake meets Res clone. It is really fantastic, really good looking, and at 6 meg to download, I'm impressed for the visuals and the style and the music. He's compressed it into that smaller download. Very, very good game. Okay, next up is the wonderful Lumi. This is a beautiful looking puzzle platformer that plays with some very nice controls. You have a very unique concept of how it works with the energy flows, of basically having blue electricity and red electricity, and depending which one you use, depends whether you can stick to it and whirl around and force yourself away. Interesting puzzle dynamics. I must admit, quite enjoyed it. Very good looking. Was released on iOS, but whether that version is still working, we can't say. This is a definite must if you enjoy puzzle platformers. And just look at the artwork, it is amazing. And puts quite a few retail Xbox games to shame as well. Okay, next up is another Xbox indie game only as well, from what I can see. I couldn't see this getting any other releases. This is Chus Dynasty. It is a Super Smash Bros. Clone, and it has a very oriental art style and design, I felt. And I must admit, it looks incredibly good. Plays fairly well. I think it could play a touch better as a Smash Bros. Clone, but it's a pretty much solid fighter, and there's certainly far worse out there. There's 4 characters to choose from the beginning. I don't know if there's any more that you can unlock or not. They all play very differently, and certainly got some really interesting art style and great character design.
But time is different for those that have an end. In a world where mortals and immortals coexist, these differences in perceptions often collide. The Princess Bree saw her body as dust before she would wed Orion, her immortal love. So King Orion became the monster Viator in the time between blinks.
Found you. We'll have to do this the hard way. The truth hurts. Stop running. Found you. If this is the only way. That was your warning. She intends to.
Okay, next up we have the fairly simplistic but quite complicated puzzle game Cubism, and is actually spelt the same as the art style, so trying to search for this game was next to impossible. Basically, it's a very simplistic puzzle game. You get puzzle pieces and you have to form cubes with them, and of course you've got to get the various sides together. Surprisingly tricky to actually do, but really fun, really interesting. And I've not seen too many puzzle games like this, so this is definitely a pick up. And this is also one that I cannot find on any other system, so I think this is an XBLA exclusive as Xbox Indie exclusive as well. Right, next up is the Rogue Dungeon adventure game, Cursed Loot, which is an enhanced version of the original Xbox indie game Epic Dungeon, although Epic Dungeon has since been delisted and Cursed Loot has a number of improvements and extra characters. It's a nice little Rogue Dungeon game. If you know the genre, you'll know exactly what it's like. You basically explore dungeons, everything's randomly generated, secrets, loot to find, better gear, better equipment. You know it already. If you've played Diablo, it's just like that kind of. Graphically, the graphic style very much reminds me of a Commodore 64 with a bit more colour, so it's got a very interesting and very 8-bit graphic style. But if you like this type of genre and you like that type of art style, you'll be right at home with this game. Very enjoyable from what I've played. Okay, Little Racers is a top-down racer in the same genre as Micro Machines, Supercars, all those classic games. It is a very solid, very enjoyable top-down racer that supports up to 4 players on Xbox Live Indie. And this one, as far as I can tell, was only released on the Xbox platform. It got a sequel as well called Little Racers Street, which is also available, but that also got released on Steam. And interestingly, that's more slightly isometric view, as the sequel is actually in fully 3D, whereas this one's in all 2D. But certainly both games are worth a pick up, but the first one was only released on Xbox Live as far as I can tell. Okay, next up we have Dark, and this is not to be confused with the Xbox 360 retail game developed by Calypso of the same name. Yes, and confusingly that was called Dark as well, although this is all lowercase, that was all uppercase. But either way, moral of the story, don't call your name a generic word that has lots of different uses, and there's also numerous other games that usually use it as a prefix. Anyway, Dark is a very interesting platform. It has some really nice use of light and shading. I won't say it's the best platformer I've ever played. In fact, I would say the platforming's not as good as it could be, but there's some interesting physics here, and I quite enjoyed playing it. It's very stylized, very unique. It's not a perfect game by all means, but it's certainly... the visuals are what struck me as certainly worth at least investigating and playing it. There's some really great use of light sourcing with how your character changes the light around him as he moves.
This is the story of a very special circus.
Okay, so I'm going to finish now, but just before we wrap up, I'm going to mention 2 Xbox indie games that while we're losing the console versions when the servers go for Xbox Indie, they're still available on, in this case, in Showtime Carneyvale, it's available on Windows, Microsoft Store, I believe, and my Windows Phone. It is actually a really lovely looking puzzle game, sort of platformer puzzle game, I suppose. A bit like, it's actually very similar to Lumi's. You have to grab and throw the clown around and hit stuff. It's very, very good, wellly presented. This one was actually published by Microsoft, and the quality is very, very, very good. The polish is fantastic. All the interface, the menus, they all look top-notch, top-quality stuff. In fact, I think this probably should have been released as an arcade game, not an indie game, but Carneyvale Showtime is definitely very much worth a pickup. And this other title, which I'm going to show you, this is available on Steam, and I don't know if the Steam version will have more updates, because the thing with Steam is it's much easier to update than on console. But Chompy Chomp Monsters is basically what I describe as a eat 'em up or a chomp 'em up, where basically you run around and have to eat up your opponents, not get eaten up by your other opponents. Basically like a party multiplayer game, great fun for families. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed the first part of this indie roundup. It's been interesting making it, playing a lot of the indie games. Like I said, the priority is, if you liked this video, please do blog it. Please do tweet it. Please do post it in comment sections. Post it on forums. Post it everywhere. Get the word out that the indie section is closing on October the 7th. Hell, we've had a reprieve, because had we not had that reprieve, I wouldn't have even been able to make this video in time, because I'd only just got around to sort of checking some of the games on the day or two before it closed. And having actually started to wade through it, I realised how many good games there are actually on this service. So it probably does need a bit more time for us to go through, but we will try and cover as many games as we can, and I will certainly do a blog post that lists them all on hopefully Friday, but I'll try and do a few more videos. I might just do a few shorter videos. They will just be gameplay videos going forward, but please do get the word out there. Please do tweet Major Nelson. Please do tweet Phil Spencer. Please do tweet all the official Xbox accounts. I doubt we'll hear back from any of them, but at least get the word out to say some of these games actually deserve to be saved, because some of them are really good. If you like the games shown in this videos, then please do download them on XBLA Indie, play them, and if you really do like them, please purchase them. Give those small developers those extra coppers, give them a bit of cash. If you enjoyed the game, purchase them, because all small developers need the extra money, and quite frankly, we deserve to support these small developers, because there's some really great ideas here that you won't see in mainstream gaming or big budget titles. And there's quite a lot of them, and even I'm sort of having to wade through the amount I've played through the past few days. I mean, some of them have been terrible. There's been some really good ones. I'm like, yeah, these ones need to stay. So just have to keep playing through them. I will try and get some more videos out. And as always, if you've liked and enjoyed our content, please do subscribe, follow, and tweet us here at Randomised Gaming. Okay, that's me finished. And sorry about the slight voice quality, but due to the unmovable deadline of the termination of this service, I have had to rush the voice recordings a little and haven't cleaned them up as much as I normally do. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and till the second part, sayonara.